You don't know if you're going to meet the moment until the moment finds you. You have no idea. You think you know what you would do. You think you know how you might respond, but you don't really actually know till you're right there in the fire. Donald Trump singled me out on social media. As that was happening, I mean, I'm making mental decisions in real time. And I had to sort of have a few moments with myself and saying, like, okay, if this results in you being fired, like right in this moment, what are you going to do?
What does it mean to show up as your whole self, no matter the cost? In this best of episode of My Legacy, hosts Martin Luther King III, Andrea Waters King, Mark Kilberger, and Craig Kilberger explore what it means to tell the truth about who you are and stand in it, even when it's hard, when it's messy, when the world tells you not to. We'll hear from Billy Porter on why the comfort of being accepted isn't worth the pain of hiding your truth. Patrick Kennedy on turning a public unraveling into a greater purpose. Jemele Hill reminds us courage isn't planned, it's revealed. And first up, Sarah Jakes Roberts, the heir to Bishop T.D. Jakes' ministry, on how embracing her truth became her greatest calling.
Sarah, becoming a mom at 14, I'm sure that was a lot of judgment, a lot of pressure, expectations, especially when you look at it within the faith community, right?
Yeah.
So what do you remember around that in that moment, and how do you feel it shaped you and your legacy moving forward?
14 is such a young age to become a mother that I think to properly contextualize it, you have to understand that I was not afraid of being pregnant or having a baby. I thought I was going to get in trouble. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get grounded, or my parents are going to be so upset. It wasn't until I saw their response that I began to realize that this is much bigger than like you got in trouble, like your life has completely changed. But to my mom's credit, one of the things she told me, she's like, I didn't get rid of my babies. I didn't give them away. Whatever you decide to do, I'm going to stick with you every step of the way. And she did that. And man, there were so many moments where I felt like the pregnancy just solidified this idea that I don't belong in that family. So if you go back to that image of me as a little girl being confused and amazed, I think in that moment it was solidified, like, oh my goodness, you don't belong here. And so it became so easy for me to kind of move into the background. But I think in moving into the background that it also gave me an opportunity to discover my identity outside of my family name. It's like I'm already the black sheep. I'm already disconnected. Now I get to just kind of figure out who I am and what I want to do with my life. And though my life has certainly had some twists and turns, even since having the pregnancy, I found a real sense of being okay with myself without the validation of other people, because I'd lost it in many ways. And the moment that I began to really say, you know what, this is my story, I'm going to love it, I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to wake up each day and really do the best that I can, I began to see my life change for myself. And so I started writing this blog just about me. I was in this toxic marriage, and I was like, you know what, my life is unraveling and I'm going to help it come undone by telling these stories on this blog. And people started gravitating towards my message, like, oh my gosh, that's me. You took the words that I couldn't say. Oh my gosh, this is what I would pray to God if I could pray these things. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not ministry. Like, this is just me telling my story. I can't be in ministry. I'm a teen mom. And so I wrote this blog post where I was like, I'm going to just let everybody know that I'm a teen mom so they can stop putting that pressure on me. It kind of backfired because they were like, oh my goodness, now that I know that you have a story too, now I trust you even more.
And Sarah, when I think of your ministry, when I think of Women Evolve, it has been built on this radical transparency. Like, you have redefined what it means to be a woman of faith based on radical transparency, your past, your marriage, you're sharing your stories. Why has it been so important for you to be this radically transparent with all those who look to you?
You know, I don't know that I saw it as radical when it started. Like I said, I kind of thought that if I told people, they would be like, oh my goodness, we'll leave her alone and it won't be a thing. But the more that I realized how many of us are suffering in silence, the more I felt like if I can tell my story and it helps someone else, then I'll tell it one more time. And if it helps someone else, I'll tell it another time. And I think what I have learned is that through isolation, the darker voices, the harder voices, the meaner voices that we hear in our head, they're louder. And until you hear someone say, like, hey, I felt that too, but I'm telling you, it wasn't always like that, or that I found a flicker, that it gives someone permission to start looking for light even in their dark seasons. And I didn't want to I didn't want to be in ministry. I didn't have this as like a goal in my heart. And so I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to at least be honest. I don't want anyone to ever be surprised that because I preached a message that I experienced depression, that I worked at a strip club. Like, I want you to know, like, this is what you're getting. It is not much, but I am going to give my best. I'm going to share my best. And if I make you feel less alone, then girl, we could grab arms and move towards better together. But I just didn't want to, I didn't want to live on a pedestal. I wanted to be able to, sometimes on my social media, I'll be like all glammed up, dressed up. Other moments I'll literally be snatching my wig off and washing my face. Like this is all of who I am. And I just don't want people to be connected to this caricature. I don't want to be trapped in my own life. And so for me, my honesty has been my freedom. My honesty has been the runway that allows me to not feel stuck in this life. And I think because of that, my prayer is that I'll continue to have endurance for what is ahead, because I don't have to figure out how do I keep this mask up? How do I keep this facade going? My greatest question is how do I continue to be honest in a way that reaches the most unlikely person?
Billy, your career has been a masterclass in breaking barriers and living authentically. What drives you to keep using your voice to create such substantive change as you do?
Artists have the power to reach inside of a human being and transform them from the inside out. Art has the power to heal all kinds of traumas. My soul was saved because of the arts. If I didn't have the arts, I don't think I would be alive right now. Maybe. And I know that when I'm at my lowest, for as long as I can remember, it's my art that gets me out of bed in the morning. And there was also, growing up, no representation really. No mainstream crossover representation of somebody who looked like me, who stood at that intersection of blackness, queerness, and spirituality. And the ones who did were ignored, dismissed, passed over, erased. And so I know what it felt like to be invisible for over half my life. And the only reason why I'm not invisible is because I chose myself. I chose my authenticity. I chose to have the audacity to actually choose myself, choose my authenticity, and then stand on that.
Did you do that deliberately, or do you think that choice was made for you?
No, no, because for the first part of my life and my career, I was trying to fit in so I could eat. I wasn't lying, but it was the don't ask, don't tell era of the world. And so I wasn't telling. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't telling. And the omission of not telling is ultimately a lie. And that binds you as well, And so I had the gift of failing as somebody else. And particularly in the music industry, in the 90s. And I just vowed to myself that I would never show up as somebody else again. And whatever that meant for my life and career is whatever it means. And I still say that today. I grew up in a family who believed you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. So even right now, you know, with how you look at me, with how you see me, which I think is so humbling and so inspiring and exactly my point, right? To exist inside of the truth and to have the audacity to be authentic and to speak truth always, no matter how uncomfortable it may be to some of the people around you, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so great. You know, sometimes there are consequences that come with that, as you know. So I'm grateful that my work and my efforts and my intentions are being seen and experienced. Once again, in the spirit in which I am sharing them.
I got to go all the way back to the origin, because when I look at the courage it took at a very young age, Patrick, to be open, to battle addiction, bipolar disorder, rehab at 18.
Yeah.
Like, can you take us back to how that moment in your life and frankly, how formative it was for you sitting here today?
Well, of course, in my family, even though we were big in social justice, like everyone else, we felt really imprisoned by the shame and stigma of mental health and addiction issues. We wouldn't talk about them, even though, as I said, we're very progressive and all the rest, because the power of shame and stigma are so strong. I did not become a leader as some profile in courage that my uncle, wrote about profiles in courage. I reacted to a situation where the fellow that I had been in drug rehab with had sold his story of being in rehab with a Kennedy to the National Enquirer. And so I had to see my own face on the cover of the National Enquirer with the headlines, Patrick Kennedy, drug addict. And this was going into my second term in public office. Of course, I thought my political career was over. This was back in 1991 when these were really big issues. Of course, today, nothing knocks you out of the box because everything's fair game. But my constituency was really something. They really didn't like what had happened to me. And so I was reelected. When I got to Washington, I could sponsor all this mental health legislation, including the one that I kind of became known for, which is the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act. And I was the first name on that bill. I was the youngest member of Congress from the smallest state in the country. And yet I got to put my name number one on a bill that simply said that we had to treat the brain like any other organ of the body and have insurance coverage cover all the illnesses. Nobody wanted to be champion of and if you had a bill with the title of the bill had the words mental in it and addiction, I mean, what politician wants to be the primary sponsor of that? Because, of course, the next question is, well, do you have a mental health issue or an addiction issue? And no one wants to answer that because, of course, we all do. And so they don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But for me, since this guy kind of ratted on me, I was thrown out there, and it ended up being one of the greatest things that ever happened in my life. So God works in mysterious ways.
Patrick, you've always been open on mental health issues. You've talked about it, but the diagnosis of bipolar came later, and a lot of people struggle without understanding diagnosis. So can you help us understand a little bit of what was your own personal journey to understand what you were experiencing with the lens that might help some of the listeners who are searching on their own journey?
Well, bipolar used to be known as manic depression. So I experienced a lot of mania, and part of the reason I was elected at 21 to the state legislature and then elected to Congress at 27. You'd say, well, what is anyone thinking doing that? But I, of course, I had this fueled by the fact that my family did big things. So, of course, part of me thought, well, I can do big things. But, I was definitely over my skis. And so there was that. And then self-medicating with alcohol and drugs was a way I used to manage those symptoms. Ironically, I had the best psychiatrists in the world, but they didn't often get the training in addiction. I have just celebrated my 14th year of continuous sobriety. I didn't get sober till I was 42. I was in and out of hospitals throughout my time in Congress. And most of them were obviously all anonymous. I made a big point, even though I'm the champion of anti-stigma, to not say that I'm going in there because I still felt the stigma. It's still very alive and well. So I went to the Mayo Clinic rather than Hazleton for my drug treatment because I thought if I went to the Mayo Clinic, people might think I had a real illness. And that's when the height of my, work on parity. So this is still very stigmatized. And, the best way to change that is to normalize mental health as part of overall health.
Like, follow, and subscribe to the My Legacy podcast. And most importantly, share this with someone who needs a reminder of their strength today. You talk about courage, and I want to reflect on what that courage has meant because, very famously in 2018, you called out President Trump's racism. You called out Jerry Jones, his stance on players taking a knee. And that ultimately cost you your job. That's courage. And so when you talk about courage, when you reflect back on that time, what did that teach you about your voice? What did that teach you about your values? And frankly, what did it teach you about your willingness to risk it all for what you believed in?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people who have been in far more dangerous positions than that one, especially as, with you all being so intimately acquainted with the civil rights movement, is that you don't know if you're going to meet the moment until the moment finds you. You have no idea. So if you would have asked me before that actually happened, hey, if this was the scenario, what would you do? You think you know what you would do. You think you know how you might respond, but you don't really actually know till you're right there in the fire. And so all of the decisions that I made as the, White House called for me to be fired, as, Donald Trump singled me out on social media, as that was happening, I'm making mental decisions in real time. And I had to sort of have a few moments with myself and saying, like, okay, if this results in you being fired, like right in this moment, what are you going to do? Or if they put it on the table, hey, either apologize to the president or you're going to have to leave here. What are you going to do? And every instinct and every cell in my body was like, if they asked me to apologize to the president, I'm not going to do it. And I made that clear very early. I'm never apologizing to him. I said what I said. And we just got to live with that. The other part of it, too, is like knowing that, hey, if this is the end of the road right here, I didn't leave ESPN until a year later, and I left on my own terms. And if at the moment they had to make a business decision, I would have lived with it. It wouldn't feel good, especially given all the work that I put in to get to that point. And there's not many people who get the opportunity to anchor the 6 o'clock Sports Center, one of the sort of treasured time slots at ESPN. But if that was the result, that was the result. And when stuff like this happens where your integrity and your character is questioned, you have to be able to live with yourself. And I would not have been able to live with myself had I capitulated in a way that I think would not have spoke to who authentically I am. So it was a lot of lessons that I found out in real time, and just because the situation was there. And I'm thankful for that, because when similar situations, maybe not always involving the president of the United States, but when other tests of your character, your integrity, when those things happen, it's muscle memory. Now you're confident because you've already done it. And I've done it at a level that most people don't get to do it at. And so when I'm in meetings or in determining business relationships and things pop up where you have to stand on something, I'm so much more comfortable doing that because I've already done it before. It's very similar to an athlete. I'm sure Michael Jordan missed a lot of game-winning shots before he actually made them. And when he finally made one, it became muscle memory. And then after that, that dude was never losing. So I sort of approach it with the mentality that an athlete might.
So even before that happened, let's also go back to your beginning days of ESPN. Because as you mentioned earlier, you found yourself in rooms where you were, most times one, if not the only woman, certainly probably the only Black woman. So if we're talking about legacy on this show, and you at ESPN early 2000s, that legacy is there. But you said about that time that it is both isolating and yet motivating. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about what you mean by that?
So the isolating part is when I was a sports columnist at the Orlando Sentinel. This would have been in 2005 and most of 2006. I was the only black female sports columnist at a daily newspaper in North America. And notice I didn't just say America, right? So that's one out of 405 newspapers. And that is an embarrassing statistic for the profession of journalism. And a lot of people might have thought that that would have given me some sense of accomplishment. It did not. What it was communicating to me, and even worse, communicating to other women who might want to get in the business, is that your voices aren't necessary, nor are they valued. And so that's the isolating part. And, it also comes with a lot of scrutiny because you're the only one. And a lot of black people have been in this situation in all industries, is that when you're the only one, you then become the test case, right? So you have to carry yourself a certain way because you are living with the burden of, if I mess up, no one else is coming after me. Mm-hmm. Black people aren't perfect, right? So it's like, if I make some junior mistakes or whatever, if that's the reason why you won't see value in black women having voices in the sports space, then that to me reflects more on you than it does on me. So you're carrying all of this, but at the same time, getting to ESPN, a place that is considered to be, for our profession, at the very top, if you're in sports media, being the most powerful sports media company in America, then, there's something to be celebrated by being able to advance and take that step and realize that all the hard work has brought you to this place and brought you to this sense of elevation. But it's always, to me, about who is able to come behind you as a result. Now, ESPN is in a very different position because they can hire whoever they want. And you look at their team picture, and it's very diverse because they have a lot of women. And even before I got there, Robin Roberts was the one who set the table, And so they've always had a steady pipeline of women of color and putting them in certain positions. Where I was a little bit different is that they were traditional anchors, and I was one of the few that were able to develop a foothold and an imprint at ESPN by giving my opinion, by creating conversation based off my perspective and my experience that I had as a sports journalist over the course of many years. So I was very thrilled to be there, but I also was fully aware that if I walk into one more room and I'm the only one in there, that's not a good room. It's like I've never been one of those people, and there unfortunately are some people of color who are like this, that they do want to be the only one in the room. I don't want to be the only one in the room because I don't know everything. I don't represent the entire totality of women, of black women. I do not do that. And so it's important that we all, when we go in these rooms, that it's not just about getting in the room. It's about getting in the room and kind of breaking it up and opening the door even wider so that more of us, so it's a flood of us coming in.
I loved when Kamala Harris said, upon accepting the vice presidency, I might be the first, but I won't be the last. I love that sentiment. And so here you are at, ESPN, seemingly from the outside, riding on top of the world. Then you had this unfair attack and this fall from where you had worked so hard to be. But throughout all of that, Ian was there. And he, walked with you through that storm and was always at your side. So my question is for you, Ian, and particularly for couples that are listening right now, and if they're going through the storm, they're watching someone that they love go through the storm, what advice would you have for couples walking that path?
I believe communication is the key. Constant communication. When when she was going through her storm, really, first and foremost, I wanted to make sure that I was there and she felt my presence and she knew that she wasn't alone. We had a lot of good times, and that was probably the most challenging part of our relationship up to that point. So my biggest thing was making sure that she didn't feel alone, making sure that she felt my presence and we were going to get through this together. And naturally, I'm a fixer. So sometimes I have to dial that back because sometimes she may just want to vent and she just needs a listening ear versus, solution after solution. But my goal was to remain positive throughout the entire situation because I knew something good would come from it. And a lot of things came from it that were good on a positive note. So just positivity and communication would be my advice to any couples going through any type of turmoil.
Yeah, and I remember when I got suspended, so I had a 2-week suspension. I think I spent the first week with you, right? So that to me said a lot about our relationship, is that my immediate instinct after I got suspended was I need to hop on the plane and I need to be with him, right? Because I knew that the comfort I was looking for, I knew the solace I was looking for, I knew all of that could be found in him. And, that spoke volumes about our, relationship. And I know it probably wasn't the easiest from you in the sense of that, here you have me being discussed on all these news channels. And, he's also in the corporate world. So you have colleagues that are watching this.
Well, the challenge for me was, under normal circumstances, if I was dating a regular woman, if she got into an issue with someone at work, I would just go up there and have a conversation with that guy. But with it being the president of the United States, I was a little handcuffed. So it was a little challenging for me. So, and that's another thing, we have fun. So making her laugh and just making her feel comfortable.
Thank you for joining us for the Best of My Legacy. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment.